Hello there. So we have a lot to do now. The day off is not something that I planned on. So we're going to try to catch up on our PowerPoints. That way we don't get behind. This class has a lot of information in it, and I want to make sure that we cover what we need to cover. So with that said, I'm going to share my screen. We're going to jump in. We're going to go over some PowerPoints together. I'm going to try to not make these too long. Obviously, I don't want to make a 3-hour video, but we need to do something to stay on pace. Slideshow from the current slide. Let's go. We're going to talk about prenatal development and childbirth. This is an important thing to consider that can have lifelong consequences if there are pathological conditions that exist in and during development. So, thinking about this, we need to go over like the stages of birth. We think of trimesters for the pregnancy. We think of, oh my goodness, what is happening? Watch YouTube on video error. So something's wrong. But pregnancies have a different sort of time frame versus the development of the fetus, the zygote and fetus. So we're going to differentiate those and we're going to talk about some things that are important. So very first thing, the conception to birth, there is the period of the zygote. And the first phase of the zygote, these are stem cells, and they begin a continuous process of differentiation. So from one cell initially, one cell, coming together from a sperm and an egg, and then dividing into 200 billion cells at birth. So there's quite a journey to go over in 10 months. The period of the zygote lasts about 10 to 14 days. There aren't pregnancy tests that are effective at this time. You really can't tell. There's something called a blastocyst that exists while and before the zygote implants itself into the uterine wall. And when it actually goes into the uterine wall, that's when it gets some added nourishment. And then when that happens, when the blastocyst implants in the uterine wall, that's when there's hormones that are released telling the mother not to menstruate. And that's what really the pregnancy tests are looking for. Sorry, I'm trying to go back. This thing does not want to. There we go. And so this is, yeah, I wanted to have the blast. So I had some videos. For some reason, they're not playing. I hope they play for you if you can get them to play because they show this first process. It's very interesting to note that about 75%, three quarters, well over half, definitely most fertilized ova fail this initial process of development and are miscarried. So think about that. Think about all the births that we have, and that's only about 25%. Or if you get there, maybe not quite 25% of births are representative of all fertilizations, which is pretty crazy insane. So really, birth is not just a given. It's not just a given that um, that a fetus or a zygote or blastocyst is going to make it to a period of being a human. So it's just, you know, uh, it's not given. Another 20% are miscarried after entering the embryonic phase. So miscarriage is so I say this if people feel like guilt or some reason over miscarriage, miscarriage is more common than having a child. So there's no reason to have like significant like remorse over something that is not necessarily at all given. So anyway, the third week to the eighth week is is considered this embryonic phase, embryo. And so there's this whole thing, like think about a chicken's egg. So there's this amnion, this yolk and this sac, and that's really kind of what it looks like. If it's like if you break it down, it really looks like chicken egg developing. You know, its chorion, placenta, and umbilical cord start to develop in this stage. Oh boy, this is whatever reason these errors are really fouling this thing up. I mean, big time. All right. So the period of the embryo, let's talk about that. This is from the 3rd week to the 8th week. This would be a test question, so please earmark this. This is the 2nd phase of prenatal development where you get your major organs and anatomical structures starting to take shape. One thing early on that develops here is the brain, and this starts to really control. Yes, we have these genetic codes that are released, and um, most, all humans go through these similar like these stages. So this is not like our genetic code tells our body, like developing bodies, to go through this. But think about, the cord, the spinal cord extending down through this brain, through the brain stem here and into down your spine. So that's all. And really what develops first is this interior part of the brain. This is the very first part of the stuff to develop here is I'm trying to take the brain apart if I can. It's been a while. This thing's sticking. Um, but if you pull out like the brain stem, this is the very like basic stuff, the neural tube stuff starts to develop and then everything around it. So very early on, you have this like idea of like a sapling growing. And I think, when you talk about dendrites as branches, dendritic pruning. So we get into some different terms. Really, it is appropriate to think of the brain like as a developing tree with a trunk that spreads out with a lot of different branches. So by the 4th week, and so the neural tube develops from the ectoderm and becomes the central nervous system. By the 4th week, the heart is formed and is beginning to beat, which is again very early on. I mean, that's a week after the period of the embryo. In the 2nd month, the brain starts to develop rapidly because it's going to be more orchestrating the development of different things. In the 7th to 8th week, sexual chromosomes are activated. So, allowing, development of male, female, and there are 1 in 100 births that occur where there's ambiguity in sex. So the sexual chromosome, sexual development, 1 out of 100 births have some uh, uh, just genetic differences where there's characteristics of both sexes. Circulatory system now functions, and spleen and liver start to produce blood cells. I'm not again play the videos that they help. Um, After the period of the blastocyst, the period of the embryo, when we get to the period of the fetus, and that's the rest of the development, 9+ weeks. And so you have rapid growth and refining of all organ systems. In the 3rd month, the digestive and excretory systems work together. So the fetus swallows, digests nutrients, and urinates. So it's crazy to think about that happening with inside the mom, but that's, mom, you're excreting waste for both for two. That's a lot on your system too. By the end of the 3rd month, the sex of the fetus can be determined. The 4th and 6th month, the fetus begins to suck, swallow, munch, hiccup, breathe, cough, snort. So these are all reflexes. These are all early reflexes that developing musculatures within the body that are then going to be necessary to survive outside the womb. There's an age of viability, and that's a point between 22 and 28 weeks when survival outside the womb is possible. I'm not saying it's like guaranteed for sure. I mean, again, that early of a delivery, I mean, you can't think like, hey, this kid's birthday is this date. No, you really need to think about, well, not really, because the kid's trying to work up to that 10 months, the of pregnancy. And so this early on, there's not a lot guaranteed on development. So it's very um disadvantageous to development for it to try to take place outside the womb. Um, just we aren't prepared, but its survival is possible. None of the developmental phases are connected to trimesters. So mom's experience, your trimesters are different than the baby's development. So I think page 47 of the text still, there's a page in the textbook that goes over that. Teratogens, there will be a test question or two on teratogens. These are substances, experiences that can damage the fetus. So things like viruses, drugs, chemicals, and radiation can harm a developing embryo. And especially when you harm early on with the replication that these cells are going to take shape for the rest of a person's life, it can be very damaging. The effect of a teratogen on a body part or organ system are worse during the sensitive period when that structure is growing internally. So I'll go into some of that more, but I have a story about uh, brain development. If the corpus callosum, like you can tell when a mother has drank and so or had a teratogen in her system by even like the shape of the brain structures inside. Like the corpus callosum is this goes between the hemispheres, helps link the left and right brain here together. This matter right here. If this is like there's certain days like when that kicks on in our development, and that can cause like I've even had one guy demonstrate like antisocial behavior. Like you can do these brain scans and see where like, that would have been moral development. That would have been like uh, that area of the brain would have been responsible for like executive function. So it's really teratogens can be very harmful. And some, like I'm talking about here, some teratogens may cause sleeper effects that aren't really apparent until later in life. Rubella can cause blindness, deafness, cardiac abnormalities, and intellectual disability. The flu has been linked to lower IQ with really severe high, fever and other serious conditions. So, mom, we need to take care of moms if we can. STDs are also, it might be considered a teratogen. Gosh, when my wife and I had our first baby, they asked us like 20 times if any of it had herpes. It's like, why should we? I mean, you've asked me many times, should I know something? It's like, I don't, but it's like, but I, looking at the research, like herpes can kill about a third of all infected newborns and cause blindness and brain damage. So there's a reason why they asked that. They're not suspecting you of your partner of promiscuity. So I throw it out there because it was kind of a joke between her and I, like, should we be like, do you need to tell me something? Like, I'm just kidding. Anyway, um, there's some information about HIV, AIDS, and syphilis. You're also welcome to look at that stat sheet. There are drugs that can be linked to that teratogens and teratogenic activity. And thalidomide was prescribed to alleviate morning sickness, but it can cause birth defects. Aspirin as well. So try to avoid aspirin if you're trying to, take substances for fever. Caffeine is linked to miscarriage and low birth weight. So caffeine is a stimulant, and it takes blood away, the nourishments away from the developing fetus. If you drink a lot of caffeine, um, a little bit's probably okay, but it's like it stimulates circulation. Um, vasoconstrictor. Um, Alcohol is really bad. I mean, alcohol, if you can avoid alcohol at all, during development, there's a lot of, we used to call fetal alcohol syndrome. We're also aware of fetal alcohol effects. You may not have the full syndrome where you don't have the cleft right here, flat, very skinny lips, the eyes are a little bit farther apart. There, like I said, the brain abnormalities was actually linked to people who had drank a lot during pregnancy. Nicotine is also not good for pregnancy. Other illicit drugs um, can cause impairment. And so you're welcome to read over those. The developing fetus are very sensitive to what's going on. I'm gonna stop there because I'm getting a phone call. If I can.